Right, hello everybody. We've got Mike Shorer here today from Mike Shorer Jewellery. He's going to join us, and we're going to be looking a little bit at Mike's journey, kind of up to this point in time, and then really what his long-term plans are, and kind of where he wants to go over the next 10 years, and maybe some of the hurdles that he might have in reaching those goals. So before we begin, Mike, tell us a little bit about Mike Shorer Jewellery, kind of in a sort of B&I style, 60 seconds. You can have a little bit longer than that, maybe a couple of minutes.
Okay.
But
That's great. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for inviting me along to this.
No worries.
Well, I'm a seventh generation goldsmith, and I personally started making jewellery when I was about 13. Dad had a studio in the garden, so he started teaching me how to use all the tools that he had. Mum's an artist, so she taught me how to paint and draw. It went on from there. I just felt comfortable with metal and understanding what happens when you hit it and heat it and that sort of thing. So went on, went through school, changed the A-level syllabus to include jewellery from design technology, and got an A in that, so that was handy. Went to college at Sir John Cass School of Art up in London for 4 years, did a diploma, which was great because you could experiment at the country's expense.
Yeah.
Yes, taxpayers' expense, paid for all that jollity. So when we weren't drinking, we were designing and making jewellery, which was great fun. And then came out and did a few things. We'll probably dip back into that part of the journey later on. But where I am now is my own studio in New Haven, East Sussex. And everything is commissioned. Everything I do is commissioned.
So how did you go from kind of finishing college, university or whatever to then maybe getting your career up and running, I suppose? And because you've worked with some, or made jewellery for some pretty famous people and various other bits. So they're interested to learn a little bit more about that. But how did you kind of go from that point forward?
It's a bit of a leap.
There's a big hole in that because you're not that far off 20 now, are you? So.
Okay, thanks. It's people say that I was lucky in my career, but which I was. Things have just happened around me, and I just got swallowed up with it. But you do make your own luck. You've got to put things in place to make your own luck. So I worked my butt off at college, and then I got busy up in Hatton Garden and put myself around up there. Shared a workshop with another craftsman, and started making master patterns for the casting companies up in Hatton Garden, which is a particularly niche market. You've got to make these absolutely perfect little patterns that they then take through the casting process. Then from there, I had enough of that and joined a high street jewellers, because it's okay making the stuff, but you've got to have a background knowledge of the customers and the economics and all that sort of thing. So that taught me how to deal with the great British public, and as with most people who have dealt with the great British public, they are a remarkable bunch. So that's a big learning curve.
Demanding at times.
Very demanding and completely lunatic a lot of the time, but good fun. And I learnt a lot about selling and how to sell up.
Okay.
And how to suggest people spend a little bit more money on something, more money than they'd anticipated in the first place, but they're happy to do so because I could show them that the quality of what they were buying was so much better.
Okay.
Then I had a really lucky break in that my lady friend at the time worked in South Kensington, just down the road from Theo Fennell, who's one of the leading lights and great designers of this century, if you like.
Yeah.
And she wandered into his shop, which hadn't been open all that long, and said, do you need another designer? And he said, which took some balls, really, to say that to him.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said, no, because I'm the designer, and she had given him a bit of background about what I can do. Can your guy make jewellery? She said, yes, he can. So I popped in there a couple of days later for an interview, and over the weekend they phoned and gave me the job, so I started with them as a diamond mounter,
right,
making proper top-end jewellery.
Yeah.
And
that's for the audience. That diamond mounter is like
a diamond
putting it in the clasp on a ring or something.
Sorry, it's a
Talk
trade.
to me like I'm 5.
Term. No. Every trade's got its own terms and little phrases for little things they do.
Yeah.
So a mount is the metalwork that holds all the precious stones. So that's got to be absolutely perfect. So all the diamonds and rubies and sapphires and everything fit in there properly. And then from there, 9 months later, he made me studio manager, which was quite a leap. And it's quite a leap in a human resources area as well, because initially there was about 10 of us in the main workshop. I was their mate, right? I was just one of them. But then if you're promoted to a managerial role without any training, it's really difficult. And I found that fairly tricky, but just got to get on with it, and you just learn on the job.
Yeah.
And then they made me the manager of their special projects division, so it was in another workshop in another part of London. So we're making the really big stuff for the Royals and Rock and Rollers. We made stuff for Harrods, Tiffany, New York, Mitsukoshi in Japan, and big trophies and things.
Yeah.
So that was a hell of a learning curve.
Yeah.
And that was great. And then I got bored with sitting on a train with a lot of people who were strangers to soap and shower gel and any sort of fragrance.
The underground.
Yeah. So I resigned from there to start up in my own workshop when I was back in Essex, and built that on a farm and did that for several years. And then talking about making your own luck, the first 2 weeks I spent, this is before the internet and all that, writing about 200 letters to prospective clients, corporate and private, to tell them what I do and where. And I only got 3 decent replies, but one of them was Barry Hearn, who at that time ran Matchroom Sport, and he was promoting Steve Davis and the snooker and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he was just down the road in his office in Rockford. Cut a long story short, I've made all their trophies for 34 years now.
Yeah.
And that's been great.
Yeah, I love that story.
Yeah.
It's like the proper power of just writing a few letters and,
I know.
3 out of 200, did you say?
Yeah.
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 And that's the kind of that's quite normal, actually, to be fair.
It seems.
The percentage turnaround is like maybe 1 or 2% when you write that volume of letters. So, but that 1 or 2% did lead to something, and a very long relationship as well.
Yeah, we got on like a house on fire because similar sort of Essex boys, and we came out with some crazy ideas, and he started promoting all different sorts of sports as well. So it's not just snooker; it was everything from darts. Well, I do all the World Darts trophies now. Poker, that was a huge one. Global poker went nuts for about 12 years.
Yeah.
Fishing, shooting, bowling, boxing.
Yeah.
Boxing was another big one.
Okay.
So that's great.
So, out of interest, is that on your sheet? You've got you run sort of 2 sides of the business. Is that trophy and then jewellery? Is that how it's split?
Well, I actually run 2 complete different businesses in the same area. One is Mike Shorer Fine Jewellery, and that's all the bespoke, handmade, commissioned jewellery and trophies. And then the other one is my late father's company. He was, as well as being trained as a proper jeweller, he was the senior conservation officer at the British Museum for 40 years, and he created a technique to make exact copies of very expensive, very fragile museum pieces.
Right, okay.
And he had a light bulb moment when he was laying out some of the pieces in one of the cabinets for an exhibition, and he heard someone say, I wish I could wear something like that brooch. So he thought, right, well, let's try something. So he developed this process, and now there's about 400 pieces in the range of through every different time period, from Bronze Age right up to medieval.
Yeah.
Now I run that, and it's a proper full e-commerce online thing.
Yeah. And that's so people can log in and basically say, I want this, I don't know, I'm not a big history fan, to be honest, but like,
okay.
I want the necklace from Tutankhamun or something like that, or whatever it might be. Maybe not quite that level,
okay.
but the bracelet that Cleopatra wear or something like that, or whatever, Cleo. And then they can select that off your e-commerce website,
That's right.
purchase that, and then, okay. And then there's like a mould or something to make that repeated.
I've got a manufacturing company in South London that does most of the range. And which is all very affordable because of the materials that we use. So it's just pick, pack, and post for those. Yeah. But that has led on to doing specials from that. One of the pieces is a very ornate cross from Durham Cathedral. About 8 years ago, they had an extension to their building that Prince Charles opened. So they asked me to make a solid gold version of that for him, so that was quite fun. But it's gone on from there, and now we're supplying films. Like when Dad was running the business in the year 2000, he supplied the original Gladiator with several pieces, and they 2 years ago they commissioned about 53 pieces from for Gladiator 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Must give you an enormous sense of pride when you see your jewellery like on the telly, whether it's the trophy or the costume jewellery.
Yeah.
I'd say it's costume. That's probably a bit offensive.
No, that's all right. That's okay.
Not cheap costume jewellery, but like the replica stuff.
Yeah.
On the telly and stuff is pretty
it's a
cool.
buzz. And the biggest one was about 15 months ago, getting a call from Netflix, and they needed a ring for episode 6 of The Crown, and it's Princess Diana's diamond ring, engagement ring, but not the one that most people know. This is the one that Dodi Fayed was going to present to her. So I had 3.5 weeks to do a 6-week job. Yeah. And and it was on screen for 18 seconds.
Okay.
But I don't care. It was on screen for 18. I made it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool stuff. Yeah. Okay. So obviously you then you're doing that, and it's just pretty much yourself now doing it, isn't it? Or you've got the e-commerce site. Presumably that's kind of a process, isn't it? Like, and it's moulded, made, and then it's e-commerce packed up, and that's fairly tight. It doesn't require too much of your involvement.
No, I keep the. I have a facility at my place where all that stock is. So, I just receive the orders, pick, pack and post them from there. Yeah. And that's all doable. Yeah. And it's in manageable quantities generally. And most of it goes to the States, strangely enough.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. So before we kind of move on to the business end of things, I suppose, and we look at kind of your long-term plans and the rest of it. Tell us a bit about what you were like at school, so young Mike. That kind of curious 12-year-old to 18, I suppose.
Yeah.
What was that time like?
I apart from sport, played lots of football and constantly out on my bike. I seemed to spend most of the time just drawing or staring out the window. I was supremely lazy and everything last minute and just trying to blag it, frankly. Yeah. Just getting away with it at the last minute.
Yeah, not really fitting into the kind of normal school mainstreamness of exams and papers and stuff.
Exactly.
Sort of thing,
I mean, to give you a case in point, my mates would phone up to say, "Are you coming out on your bike or whatever?" And I said, well, this was one story. I'd been given a Napoleonic flintlock musket that was in a bit of a state, and I was restoring it, but I was only 14. It's not a usual thing that a 14-year-old does. No. So, I'd be doing that, just playing with 100 metal.
Do you think that sort of curiosity or non-ability, I suppose, to concentrate on the schoolwork, that lent itself to the more kind of art style or arts and crafts, if you like?
Yeah,
it's that kind of like left brain, right brain stuff, isn't it? Like,
absolutely right. And I would suggest that everyone spends at least quarter of an hour out of every day just staring out the window and clearing your mind, or go for a walk and clear your mind of whatever you're doing, because it relieves the pressure on you a bit, and you see things you wouldn't normally see, talk to people you wouldn't have met, and you get ideas for whatever business you're in, and especially an artistic-based business. So I was doing a lot of that at school, and I went to a school in an area that at one end of the road there was Millionaires Row, and at the other end there was not Millionaires Row. So I came from that end, and I used to see
you could look up Millionaires Row.
Exactly. Yeah. So I used to stare out the window when the rich mums were coming to pick their kids up in Bentleys and Astons and things, and they'd get out of their cars and they were wearing some serious jewellery. So I started putting two and two together, and I thought, let's pursue this then.
Yeah.
And see where it goes.
I can elevate myself up to that end of the street.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And you just get to meet...
But it's like an entrepreneurial vision, isn't it? A little bit. You're seeing like a gap in the market of how you can capitalise on that. So.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Yeah, I think, I mean, I was similar at school. I didn't really concentrate, or found it quite hard to concentrate on the subjects that I didn't enjoy.
Yeah.
So like your English, geography and things like that. History I'd struggled with as well.
Yeah.
Stuff that didn't interest me, but I really liked the maths. I did quite well at maths. I did well at design technology as well, making stuff. Obviously, that's later in life with the DIY, I suppose, or refurbing properties. Maths for good analysis of things. But English is definitely my weak skill at all. I mean, I'm dyslexic anyway, but also that kind of like I'd rather be in English class, in the lessons, I would just be like thinking about something else, like riding my bike or like the weather's nice outside or whatever. No interest whatsoever in learning the difference between where and where, or where and work, or whatever, and an hour.
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, so I think the school stuff is quite interesting, but presumably you've had other challenges throughout your career and the rest of it in terms of like kind of concentration levels or dealing with clients or whatever. You must have some pretty fascinating stories along your journey.
I've been very lucky to meet some incredible clients and been invited to some crazy things. Now, what happened was when I was working up in South Kent, we were making stuff for all the rock and rollers and all that bunch, and but it was under somebody else's name. And the people came to that shop because they wanted something designed by that guy with his name over the door.
Yeah.
When I left there and went to the farm and sent all those letters and everything, I was still making a few things for him, but I thought that I would just get those sort of people coming to me. But no, it's not like that. It's not like that. And I was also... because I was comfortable dealing with those sort of people, really high net worth people, and comfortable with them, I thought that I would just wander into their society and just pick up the business. And I was also too snobby. And I to my shame, I should have admitted that 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Because everyone's got a certain amount of money that they want to spend, and it doesn't matter what strata of society they come from. If they really want something, they'll find the money, and they love dealing with someone who can make them something that nobody else has got. It's totally unique. It's the only one on the planet.
Yeah.
And so now, I've about 5 years ago, I changed my advertising strategy, and actually through someone at the Chamber of Commerce, New Haven Chamber of Commerce, that suggested it. But I'll capitalise on it. And I use Facebook, and it's easy, and it's cheap, and it doesn't cost a thing. Every time I get a commission that is slightly unusual, I take some photos of it, put a bit of copy to it, because I like writing, and pop that up, and pop that around to different groups of people that I'm members with on Facebook. And out of that one thing that I stick up there, I always get between 4 and 5 new commissions.
Yeah.
So it's really manageable.
Yeah.
And now I've got all of those people in my sales force as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think people underestimate massively using other people as your sales force, you know, if they talk good about you. Yeah. But just coming back a little bit about the kind of the snobby bit of it, that's quite common, I think, in a lot of people, especially if you work quite a senior-ish position in whatever industry you're in, whether you're in a banking industry all the way down to whatever floristry or something like that. Yeah. People often leave and then they have that hard transition back to maybe where their career was at the start. I mean, I suffered from that a little bit. I went from being a partner in a business to running my own business and having to deal with everything from cutting the keys to the rest of it. And not that I struggled doing that, but I was like, it's a massive mindset change. And a lot of people do struggle with that, especially if you're kind of like in a professional industry and you might have done like a really, really good job of doing one bit in that business. Like a friend of mine who I know, works in an IT company, he wanted to go on his own, but he's a business development manager. And I'm like, but you don't have any skills to do with IT, so you're going to have to pull those people in. So you're going to have some deep pockets in order to set up on your own if that's what you want to do. So it's hard going from that kind of that position backwards a little bit sometimes, isn't it?
It is. But then you learn. If you want to keep going, you're determined enough to, pull your finger out and be truthful with yourself. Work out where your skills are, because a lot of people have suggested that I have a shop. I don't want a shop. I've worked in a shop before. I worked in 2 different types of shop, and I don't want the stress.
No. Yeah, I think there's a definite about finding your market, and that when you do that, like downsize, if you like, back to your old previous job, there's massive amounts of benefit in like grafting and actually having to do it yourself as well. I think that really makes you into the character that you are. It's
especially with an artistic background, it's not just the money, it's creating something out of nothing. And this isn't just flannel, this is true. The thing that really fires me up and still does it after all these years is seeing the face of the client open the box, to see what I've made for them, and for them to see it in 3D after a sketch that I've done for them. It's great, and there's quite often tears, but good happy tears.
Definitely.
So that's great. I love it.
Good stuff. Right, we'll move on to the kind of business end, I suppose, where you've got your form and what we'll have a look at your kind of goals for the next bit. So I thought we'd just getting onto your form really. Obviously, I know you primarily work by yourself, and you've got obviously these 2 business entities, and it is a little bit different to your kind of standard business where maybe there's like a start and an end to it, because you want to continue making jewellery really until time says you can't make it anymore, I suppose. But we've got your kind of your sort of goals, if you like, that you want to kind of get to really to make more pieces for film and TV productions and some more top end bespoke jewellery. And really that's your kind of long-term goal over the next sort of 10 years. And one of the biggest challenges is the lack of time, bearing in mind clients want me to make their pieces. And then second biggest challenge is using other specialists, and then infirmity. So I think from what we've discussed so far, I think like you've got these 2 distinct businesses. One's the kind of like theatrical kind of trophy making type stuff. I know they're actually 2 different businesses, but trophy making and the costume jewelry type stuff, and for the sets and things like that. And then you've got your bespoke like one-off piece jewelry that you're making for people. And I suppose inherently difficult for anybody who's like a kind of artist self person, because you don't have like somebody to train up, pass it down to, and it's a name and a brand. And unless you're going to get really massive and then start kind of selling the mold of something or whatever, then at that point it loses its kind of bespokeness. So I don't know if the focus is kind of like to do the TV stuff and the rest of it, and then the bespoke jewelry. I suppose with the TV stuff, that's about your contacts in the industry, and I don't know kind of how you get your customers that way. So if we could do that one, and then we'll come back to the kind of more bespoke jewellery stuff. Okay.
Well, the film and TV stuff, it's the only area that I pay for any advertising, and I advertise in Kay's catalogue, which is like the filmmaker's Bible. Everyone is in there for making films and TV production, and that's worked reasonably well. And there's another one as well, and an online version of the same, and that's that's as much as I need to develop, really, because they're getting to know me now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that side of the business something that you could train somebody up to do, to take over from you? Because it strikes me that that's less personalised than the kind of like the Mike Shorer piece of jewellery that you've made.
Well, yeah, a couple of different points in that question. The historic jewellery stuff, that's fine, because that's all taken care of. The manufacturing is fine. But I really want to get into making custom-made pieces for films. You know, I'm starting to work a lot more with CAD designers and 3D printing and that sort of thing, which lends itself more to quicker production of ideas for films. Yeah. So that's that. Do I want to take anyone on to pass on my skills? Yes, that's the usual thing for a craftsman of my age, is to train up someone. I haven't got a problem with passing on any knowledge and skills that I've got, but because of the way I work and where I work, I won't take on an apprentice.
Yeah.
We had apprentices when I was up in South Kent, and that was okay. That worked because it was someone else's company, and we had an ongoing revenue stream to pay for the apprentices, because inevitably they're learning. So I used to have to spend about 30% of the time putting their mistakes right.
Yeah.
And if I had someone in my studio, it's only me, and I'd end up, most of my time would be getting the work in for them to do. Well, my clients don't want that. They want me to do the work. I've got several people around the country that have specific skills, like some of the diamond setting is very complex. And there's a couple of people that do that. And enamelling, that's a completely different part of the trade. But as far as taking someone on, no.
Where you say people want to do, like they want you to do it, I get that with the fine jewellery stuff, but with the thing for TV production and the rest of it, is that, do they, I know they're like, come to you because they know you, but they're not, presumably they're not coming to you and being like, oh, there was a ring on Lord of the Rings or something like that, and it was on the screen for 10 seconds. People not necessarily knowing that that's a Mike Shorer piece of jewellery on the screen, are they? So like, I'm thinking like that side of the business is a bit easier for you to make. I mean, obviously I'm entrepreneurial, but maybe like sell off or get somebody else to run it for you at some point. You know, if you wanted to kind of have money coming in or move that on. Yeah,
the only problem with that is the things that the film companies are coming to ask me to make, and also museums are asking me to make specialist pieces as well. I can't pass that sort of stuff on to anybody else because they haven't got the background knowledge of making jewellery for 50 years that I have.
Yeah.
Even though at one stage during the Netflix thing for The Crown, they asked me to make 12 other pieces as well.
Yeah.
And it got so... The time... There was so little time to do it that there was only me that could create the 3D stuff for them and the CAD drawing and the casting and everything else, because there's no one else that can do it.
Where will they go when you're not doing it anymore? They're going to go somewhere.
They'll probably find someone else.
Yeah. So, but I'm just wondering if that bit for you, for like your like kind of long twilight years, if you like, it might be a bit of the business that you could merge or sell with somebody or something like that, or whatever, because they're going to have to go somewhere, aren't they? So they're going to lose your touch, if you like. So if you could pass that down to someone through either sale or like slow transition. Yeah. I mean, it's harder with the bespoke jewellery, which we'll maybe come on to in a bit, but I'm just thinking of you know, as you kind of, you know, get to the point where you're like, I can only take on so much now.
Yeah. Well, that is a view.
Source of income for your pension, effectively a pension or something like that. If you're like, I'm going to do this and we'll take a cut on it or something. Maybe.
I still think they will come to me initially for the design and the ideas. And then I'm building up quite a network, actually, of people that I can pass that over to. Yeah. But there'll be no one at my studio that can do that. It's different people around the country.
Yeah. Okay. Where would they go when you stop doing it? Is it you have competitors in that market, or they just have to go to someone that's doing something similar?
Inevitably there are other companies, larger companies that do this sort of thing. But I know what areas of the jewellery for the films I'm good at.
Yeah.
And it's pointless me saying, right, well, I'm going to make Roman helmets and shields and swords and stuff.
Yes.
Ironically, my dad used to do that. I just got to be realistic about what I can do and for whom. The other thing is, I've got to keep going until I keel over, really, because I haven't got any pensions.
Yeah, well, that's what I didn't ask you about pensions, but as a general rule of thumb, and I'm sure someone will slate me because there's be somebody out there with a big pension, but generally you're kind of more entrepreneurial or artistic, that kind of bracket. People don't really do the pensions thing. As a self-employed people, especially if you work on your own or something like that, it's not. It's quite common that people haven't made that provision. No. That's why I was thinking if you kind of licensed it out, or you kind of still oversaw it and were like, these are the designs and the rest of it, but the manufacturing of it, the e-commerce side of it and the rest of it is maybe taken care of by somebody else, and you're kind of almost as a consultant essentially.
I could certainly do that. But it's getting the contacts in the first place. It's getting the film people to realise they can phone me up. And I don't know any other way of doing it. Unfortunately, even though they've promised to put my name on the credits at the end of some of the films that I've done about 5 or 6 now, they never bloody do. Which is a shame, because I can make a big thing out of that. But certainly, yes, that's a really good thing to think of for the future. And just very briefly about the pensions things, I used to have several, but during one of the tricky bits of the business, I had to sell them all to keep the house. And
I think it's quite common, even with people that don't make that much of a provision for their pensions or whatever, or a later life, that they have like several pots, very small amounts, and they amalgamate them together, and then the roof's leaking, and then they use that, and then because you've got to live somewhere, right? And then you're like, oh, now I've got to carry on working for longer, and so on. So I'm just wondering, because I'm thinking like, with the bespoke stuff, that's a lot harder because it is all about you and how you make that model into a bit where, as you get into your later years, that you're kind of just doing the really profitable stuff and focusing on that, really, so that you can, what you're doing is not like a full-time job, or it's like the really enjoyable stuff, but it's like super profitable. And then the e-commerce site thing, that's more kind of just like, it will need constant management and the rest of it. And it's probably easier to get that because it's not so reliant upon Mike Shorer, the person, being involved in it. So, I definitely consider that moving to that at some point, and hooking it up so you've got kind of a share in it, or drip feed, you're a consultant or something like that, so that you've got some form of income rather than like a lump sum, which you may lump sums tend to run out, and that, whoever you do that with should grow that bit, the business anyway, so you should then be rewarded for them growing it instead of you having to grow it. So as long as you make sure you kind of have that sort of arrangement.
Are you suggesting then that I try and find someone within the film industry generally that can promote me and bring the music, bring the work to me?
Yeah, I think that would definitely be good, but I'm more suggesting that, say one of your competitors who does the film jewellery, and you say, look, I've got this really good client basis that's built up around me, got this acute problem that they only ever come into me, and I want to take an easier life as I'm getting older. How about we work in conjunction? I introduce you to those clients and the rest of it, and I don't want you to buy my business, but what I want is like 30% of whatever the profits are, or I'll act as a consultant and I'll charge you this amount for the next 2 years, and then I want to fade out as a consultant, and then you're kind of weaning your current clients off of the reliance upon it being all about the Mike Shorer show. And then you're got this drip feed of income coming in from those new people, and you're always in the background for them to be able to go, Mike, we've got this massive thing, and we need you to come out of retirement and come and help us on this because it's beyond our expertise. I think you'll find a lot of companies will like that.
Okay, well, I'll look into that. It's always going to be a bit tricky because you never know who's going to phone and when, because film production is just either so hit and miss, or
But I would also, you mentioned about the not being on the credits as well. I'd almost, if you tightened up the contract, you can almost say, like, we're doing it and we want that's part of it. Yeah. Because I think that's a good way of advertising, because then you can use that on your own social media to help build those clients and springboard off of them. Yeah. I mean, we use some of the bigger buildings and stuff that we manage and clients that we work with as marketing tools in their own right to say to people, we work with such and such. So, like, we can handle that size of building, level of business, whatever it is, so that they've got like a real case study that they can, there's something tangible they can hold on to.
Okay.
So, I'd definitely look at that, because I think with that side of it, that would be a sort of slightly easy win for you to have that kind of pension-style drip feed of income coming in, not let go of it completely, but actually have some of the sort of day-to-day stuff being taken off of you in that. Which would then, I think, would assist you with the time to spend on the Mike Shorer jewellery side of things, like the bespoke stuff. And it's a bit like the sort of Rolex thing, where Rolex is like crazy to me, because they basically have this business where you have to join a queue. Yeah. You have to pay to be on a queue to join a queue to then buy one. Really? Which is like crazy. They just, that's why so many people buy second-hand ones, because you can't get on the list. And you go in the Rolex shop and you're like, am I still on the list? I mean, I didn't even bother joining the list, but am I still on the list? And they're like, yeah, you're still 15th on the list, and then you have to wait, and then you get shorter and shorter, because they've got this real high demand, because people realise that they want that, and that's it, and they're never going to make any more. They're not going to up their production, because then it takes away from their like USP that they are a real bespoke high-end thing. So I would probably try and mould your business over the next few years to that point where you're not maybe doing so much of the kind of like, I'm hazarding a guess, like resizing rings or like, I don't know, doing a new clasp or something like that kind of like real basic work. You're more like, all I'm doing is like, I don't know, your 10k or 5k jewellery pieces, and that's kind of what I'm specialising in. So then they're high profit margin, and you've basically got yourself into a position a bit like the Rolex, where you're like, if you want something done for Christmas, you need to be telling me in August. Because I'm only able to make like 20 pieces a year max, or whatever. I don't know how many you make. That might be a crazy amount, but whatever. One a month or something. That's all I can make. And then you've built yourself into this kind of almost like a Rolex thing, where people are like, I want a Mike Shorer piece of jewellery, and I'm willing to wait for it. And you do that through your branding and stuff. I know, like locally, you use the Facebook, but you can pull on your years of experience. 40 plus years, I assume, of doing this. That you can put on that, and then really utilise that to kind of grow that sort of Mike Shorer brand, if you like. Because I think the problem with you doing it is that obviously it's hard to pass on, isn't it? So if you can kind of gear your business model to like high profit, low production.
That's something I've been trying to do for a while.
But you have to actively do it. That's
that's an interesting process.
So bearing that in mind, so we've got this kind of maybe try and get yourself a little bit out of the day-to-day running on the film production stuff and the trophy making or whatever, and then go on that real high-end stuff. How do you think that, I suppose, like the younger Mike or somebody out there aspiring to be like that, maybe some lessons that they might learn? How would you do things differently, or some lessons learned, I suppose, that kind of thing?
Some lessons I've learned would be, from the artistic point of view, keep experimenting, try all different sorts of techniques, find out, go to exhibitions. We don't say steal other people's ideas, but be influenced by other people's design ideas and techniques, and keep pushing the boundaries with what the tools will do and what your imagination will do. Because generally, clients have no imagination whatsoever, and that's where we come in. We help them with that. On the business side of things, it's always been difficult for the artistic community, whether you're a painter or a goldsmith or whatever. We generally haven't got much idea of the economics behind what has to be done in the background to keep your business going. So listen to people, ask the right questions, get a good accountant, make sure all the back-end stuff is done properly. It's a pain in the arse, a lot of it, but it's absolutely essential to make sure that the business succeeds.
Yeah, a lot of people get really bogged down in doing stuff they're not very good at, like bookkeeping and accountancy and things like that.
Yeah.
And you can just outsource most of that.
Pay someone to do it. It costs, but it saves you a lot of time, and time's the most valuable thing.
Yeah, because you can do what you're good at then, can't you? So.
Yeah, and then that's the other thing, what you're good at. Work out what it is that you're good at, because sometimes it's not immediately obvious. And sometimes you have to take a bit of a left turn, and sometimes it's a different road that you have to come back to get where you want to be.
Yeah.
That's about it, really.
Okay. Well, that's really useful stuff. And I hope those kind of like my insights or the medicine that I would prescribe
no, that's absolutely fine.
Is of use to you. I definitely look at doing those things if you know, to kind of prepare you for that kind of time where maybe you don't want to work quite so hard.
Yeah.
But without kind of losing the sort of Mike Shorer brand. And it would be nice to, you know, get that kind of like, it's a real statement piece and a brand in its own right, really, isn't it? Yeah.
You know what would have been nice is I've done some work for some immensely rich people, and which has been fantastic. And one of them, I can't tell you who it is, but one of them springs to mind. And for about 10 years, I made things for her.
Yeah.
And she never told anybody else about me.
No.
And I found out from someone else that, no, I'm her bitch. She ain't going to tell anyone about me, because she wants me for herself.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
There you go. But I think, you know, you're a brand in your own right. It's a bit like the Ruben, who was the racing car driver. You know, I said to him about personal branding and building his business around his like name and the rest of it. I think, and then you can get that clientele that are really going to spend that kind of high amount of money but low volume stuff, rather than the kind of nitty gritty ring sizing and all that kind of stuff that you might be dragged in on now.
Yeah. But if you've got any insight into how I contact those super rich people, because they're really difficult to get hold of.
Well, I would say there's a lot of Facebooky type influencers, Instagram and the rest of it. You can DM them. They'll probably have people managing their actual profiles for them, so they may be able to get. You probably might have to do something cheap or free, maybe, because that's kind of how that industry works.
Yeah.
They don't have to necessarily be young, but you can look at. There's lots of influencers out there, even celebrities that have been around for a long period of time will have all the social media presence and stuff. And look at, you know, like even locally as well, like try and look on Company's House and see what business owners locally, you know, the ones that are fairly wealthy, then you might find that they've got money to spend on other halves and wives and things like that. So you can write the bespoke letters to them and say, look, I can make you a bespoke piece of jewellery, or I saw you at an event and I loved the necklace you wore, or something. Emotional letters like that, rather than just kind of standard touting letters. You know, if you turn up to the Grand to an event and then be like, oh, I love the necklace that you're wearing, or something like that. In fact, you should come to the Barrow as one of the events that we host our table on there. I reckon there's a few people, well, lots of women in there that would definitely would be interested in some of your fine jewellery and the rest of it.
Right, I'm there.
You should come along, yes. Well, I'll get you in on that one.
Nice,
but
Thanks, Matt.
So with that said, I think that's everything. I don't know if you had any extra questions or anything at all.
No, I really appreciate that advice.
No, it's been really good having you on, Mike, and it'd be nice to have you on maybe in a year or two's time, see where you're at with things and see whether any of that's helped at all or you've implemented any of it.
Yeah, I'll see if my driver can drop me off outside.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
All right, cheers. Take care.
Thanks.